Thank you, Chairman Case and members of the committee. I'm a little nervous, so my name is Laura Pearson, Senate District 14. Okay.
Except for my microphone's not on. We have called Senate corporations to order, and we're now taking up Senate Joint Resolution 4. Sponsors here, I'm sorry. But you're in good hands. Just take a deep breath.
Thank you, sir.
At least I'm the nice one up here.
Okay, so I'm just going to read through this resolution, and I'd like you to know that this was a resolution that was passed by one of our, I know I'm not supposed to say names, but anyway,
No,
this
you
was
can we're in committee, and we're much more lax about things as long as our comments about individuals or companies are positive. Go right ahead.
Okay, this resolution was passed by the Central Committee of the Republican Party. And so I decided that I would bring it to you. Okay, this Senate Joint Resolution number SJ0004 is a resolution on commercial baseload power generation. A joint resolution requesting the governor concentrate on promoting stable, dispatchable baseload power resources from Wyoming in lieu of taxpayer-subsidized commercial wind and solar-generated power. Whereas Wyoming produces four of the cleanest sources of stable, dispatchable baseload power generation in the United States: clean coal, natural gas, uranium, and hydroelectric. Whereas Wyoming has the ability to provide these resources to the rest of the United States and the world for stable, dispatchable baseload power generation. Now therefore be it resolved by the members of the legislature of the state of Wyoming that the legislature of the state of Wyoming respectfully requests the governor to oppose future promotion and subsidization of commercial wind and solar power generation in the state of Wyoming and promote efforts that provide Wyoming's stable, dispatchable baseload energy to all of Wyoming's citizens. The legislature further requests the governor to promote the export of Wyoming's stable, dispatchable baseload energy resources to the rest of the United States and the world. And that's basically what this is, what this entails. I'm asking for an aye vote on this resolution, as many Wyoming residents are aware of the inefficiencies of this green energy. They are tired of our lands becoming dumping grounds and the destruction of our beautiful scenic byways and our beautiful wildlife corridors. We must protect Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Questions for the senator? Any questions? Anybody? Senator Landon.
Thank you. And Senator Pearson, welcome. Good morning. We've got a project or two in my neck of the woods well underway, and particularly a solar field. I'm just curious. I'm not aware of what kind of subsidies exist on solar. Have you looked into that at all? And do you have any idea what kind of? I guess I'm just not aware that we're subsidizing solar out there.
Well,
Senator Pearson.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chairman Case. Senator Landon. I think that the public's issue with solar is that they are destroying our wildlife corridors, our grazing corridors. They are putting 6-foot fences around these areas. It's an eyesore to our land. You know, and it really does, the solar is an inefficient form of energy. You know, I mean, we live in one of the coldest states. A lot of the year, there is not a lot of sunshine. And the people are seeing that. And on 372, in my neck of the woods, there's a huge solar farm there, you know, and it has affected temperature. It's affected, you know, visibility on that highway. It's affected the wildlife corridors. But back then, they had the public comment period and people made solar seem like it was such a great resource. But now people are kind of waking up in Wyoming as to what these big solar farms do. And so, if you look at any posts on new solar farms or wind farms being built, a majority of the public are against this. And so,
So Senator, solar along with wind and other types of renewable would qualify for the production tax credit, which was extended under the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not sure what the actual level of that tax credit is, but it's pretty substantial. And I think it's in the 2 to 3 cents range.
I
per kilowatt.
appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree. I think there is some subsidy. I just wasn't sure and I hadn't had time to look it up. But yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And there would be investment tax credits too and things like that. But if that's okay with the sponsor, let's go to Senator Boner and then Senator Dockstader.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, I guess I have a tendency to think about the price of a particular type of power in terms of, dollars per megawatt hour. And I want to say the difference, at least with wind, is, without the subsidies, if you have, say, over a really good wind farm with the 40-ish% capacity factor, it's going to be, what, $35 a megawatt hour or so. And with the subsidy, it goes down to below 20, which is, of course, incredibly inexpensive. And so I guess I have a tendency of agreeing with this resolution, Mr. Chairman. I think, and even though I do support wind and solar if it makes sense, and so I'm just wondering, Senator, are you aware of the effect that subsidies have on lack of innovation within these industries? Where if you look at the original scheduled dismissal, if you will, of these subsidies for wind and solar in 2020, you can look at the price of power produced, say, by wind, and it was $50, $60 a megawatt hour. Guess what happened in 2015? It started going down precipitously. The technology got better. The towers got taller. They became more efficient. They spun more often. And so, have you had any discussion about that? The way that perhaps these subsidies may be holding these industries back and disincentivizing innovation. Have you had any discussions with your constituents about that?
Thank you, Senator Pearson.
thank you, Chairman Case. Senator Boner. I think at the end of the day, what the people are seeing is the destruction of Wyoming. And many of our constituents didn't sign up for this. And we have beautiful baseload energy that is produced right here in Wyoming. Now they're talking not only on top of disposing of these windmills that are no longer functioning in our landfills, but now they're talking about putting them in coal mines potentially. So our constituents don't agree with this. They don't agree with the wind and solar. And they're just seeing the ramifications of what's going on. I'm aware that there are current projects in place. I'm asking the governor to not focus on, not to necessarily say no to those projects that are currently going. I would like him to say no, but to not further this, not focus on any more of this nonsense that is destroying our lands and our wildlife corridors. The hunters are seeing it, ranchers are seeing it with their grazing. And so, did that answer any of your question? Probably not. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, appreciate you putting this together. Understand your concerns, but I'm actually associated with a cooperative on the far western side of the state that its main source is hydro from the Pacific Northwest, but it also has complementary hydro out of the mountains in the western U.S., in the western Wyoming area, 2 different hydro sources. We have a county that purchases one, a municipality that purchases the other. But then we also complement that with solar and wind. Wind imported from another state, but our solar is actually based right there in our cooperatives area. We're getting ready to expand some more because we have customers that say that's what they want. We have a customer base that says they don't want to be associated with the traditional power out of Wyoming. They want to have solar. And so as a co-op, we set up an avenue for them to do that. Your thoughts on that if a customer wants that resource? And then a follow-up, well, I'll wait for the follow-up, Mr. Chairman, but with that, could you respond to that?
Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman Case, Senator Dockstetter. I feel like that if that's what your constituents want, I'm just saying what a majority of the state is saying. And so, like, I don't mind personal landowners doing whatever with their land, you know, I mean, but I don't think that we should be ruining the public's or Wyoming's landscapes for these purposes. When we have great energy resources in Wyoming that don't do that.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up?
Absolutely.
Senator, and I understand that. I spent a lot of my legislative career trying to defend that. But you feel like you still have an opportunity to have a little wiggle room here. You said, Governor, concentrate on promoting stable dispatch baseload resources. It's not a demand, it's a resolution just simply saying that's what our concentration should be on. And from my perception, that's what it is right now. We're concentrating on the main resources in Wyoming.
Right.
Is that your effort to just say, stick to what we have?
Yes,
You're
sir.
not necessarily opposed if a customer comes to me in my co-op and says, I want this other power as well. Your resolution, though, says stick to the basics of Wyoming, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman Case, Senator Dockstetter. Yes, sir.
You know, I think we can all take a deep breath. I kind of doubt that Teton County would have industrial scale solar farms and wind farms. Let's just kind of think about that. Senator Dockstetter. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this resolution. I was thankful to sign on to it. One of the things we've been hearing as they've looked at solar production in Goshen County, which we have not seen a lot of those types of developments. We don't have any wind or solar except for the new currently proposed projects that are there. But we've been hearing that fire districts are very concerned with responding to a fire there. We've been hearing about water resources being an issue to keep the solar panels clean so that they will produce. Could you speak to that a little bit as well?
Senator Pearson, if you can.
Yes, Chairman Case, Senator Steinmetz. I've heard of some of those concerns as well. I've heard, I mean, as far as the fire issue, yes, people are worried about that. I've heard about concerns as far as different areas that are proposing solar farms in specific being in hailstorm areas, you know, and that it's never gonna work. I've heard of just an array of, you know, I am by no means an expert in this realm. And so I want to say that, you know, but I have heard of those concerns. And so, did that answer that question?
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Let's hear from other members of the public. So thank you very much. Stay
Thank you.
close. Who else would like to address the committee on this bill? Who else? Anybody in the audience? Looking to the audience. Mr. Moline, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau. Thank you for this opportunity. Sitting in favor of this resolution, that one of the items that's extremely important to my members is having a dependable, stable supply of electricity. when we can use some of our resources, like coal, uranium, natural gas, hydro, they're constant. We can do a pretty good job of predicting what the load is going to be, and we can ramp those facilities up to meet the demand. With some of these other entities that are, we have some of the best wind in the world here in Wyoming. I'm glad somebody's finding a use for it, but the dependability of it just isn't there at this point. We don't have a good way of storing electricity, an affordable way to store it, so we appreciate the state of Wyoming put as much effort as they can to help ensure that the people of Wyoming have a good base, dependable supply of electricity. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd take any questions you or the committee may have for me.
Any questions for Mr. Moline? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you, Mr. Moline. I'm sitting here kind of trying to get my arms around the fact that so many friends and folks out across Wyoming are taking advantage of the wind industry on private property, and it's really benefiting some of our ag producers out across. I don't want in any way to get in the way of that. Is this kind of thing gonna get in the way of a private property right to put a windmill up?
Mr. Moline?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Landon, that's an excellent question. My members at our annual meeting this year debated that quite heavily. Whose private property rights trump whose? And we essentially came to no resolution. You raise an excellent point, but we also have to remember that sometimes when these projects come in, they have a positive impact on one landowner, but a strong negative impact on another landowner, collector lines, et cetera. It's a tough situation. Our general agreement was that as long as an energy source doesn't have to be subsidized, that's okay. But the current situation, and the question comes up, and I don't know how to answer it, you folks would probably know better than I do, that if these industries weren't subsidized, how many would we have?
Thank you. Senator Bonner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that is a good discussion. I think it's okay to drill down and get a little nuanced here, recognizing that there would still be some of these industries, just not as many without the subsidies. But my question has to do with the idea of, winners and losers when it comes to, say, maybe your neighbor gets a wind farm on their property, all you get is a collector line. And I'm just wondering if you have any specific examples of where that maybe caused some tension among neighbors. I can tell you that, because in Commerce, I don't know, our experience has been relatively good in Commerce County. Maybe it's because we have experience with lots of industrial development, and we know that, you have to take care of your neighbor in those sorts of negotiations with a private company. And so the circumstances I'm aware of, the neighbor who gets a collector line gets literally about 10 times the rate that the landowner has a wind turbine for that same collector line that goes across both their properties. So I'm just wondering if you have any specific examples throughout the state, maybe in areas where industrial activity is relatively new, or maybe the landowners are not quite as experienced. Could you give us some additional context there?
But
Mr. Moline?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bonner, at our annual meeting, this issue truly pitted neighbor against neighbor. It was, I won't name the counties because it's relatively sparsely populated, and I don't want to identify the individuals, but that's exactly what happened. It's an area that doesn't have a lot of industrial use at this point. It's essentially new to the county. And there was some, how to say this, sir, they were not only neighbors, they were friends. And at this point, I believe they're still friends. The relationship is slightly strained, but that was the exact issue we were discussing. Okay, you want this, it's good for you, but it's bad for me. And again, there was no resolution, so I wished I could come up with a solution, but I know even in, like up where I was raised, when they were looking for a mineral, they found it. But, that development that was going to happen on one ranch that was going to make pretty good money, but then the strong negative impacts, it it hurt the relationships. It never came to fruition, but I remember as a young lad, so that tells you it was quite a while ago. But I mean, it strained the relationships. But that basic debate on whose private property rights trumps whose, I think is beyond the realm of this resolution. This resolution simply states we want the state of Wyoming, specifically the governor, to put emphasis on what supplies us a good base load of electricity so we can have dependable power to not only run our homes, but, I don't have one, but I know the people that have center pivots would appreciate if their electricity was dependable 24/7 rather than 40-50% of the time. So I hope I know I danced awful hard around your question, sir, and I apologize, but I don't have a good answer.
You're not a very good dancer either. That was just a joke, everybody. So, Mr. Moline, if we fix the situation with respect to collector lines enjoying eminent domain, wouldn't that improve the neighbor-to-neighbor relations and allow neighbors to kind of work this out better?
Mr. Chairman, it would go towards that.
Right, thanks. Anybody else for Mr. Moline?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dockstader.
Senator, before you walk away, you're fine with the resolution? You're good
I'm sorry, so I'm gonna have a hard time
You're
hearing
good
you.
with this resolution?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moline. Anybody else? Thanks a lot. Who else in the audience would like to address the committee? Who else in the audience would like to address the committee? I'm not seeing anybody. Let's go online. Anybody?
Two people online for this this resolution, and the first one is Dawn Marquette,
It's a
I believe.
woman?
I believe so.
Yeah, Ms. Marquette, I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee for this opportunity to testify in this bill. I want to thank Laura or Senator Pearson for bringing this. I'm the originator of this resolution in Lincoln County. I'd like to explain why I think this resolution is important and why I came up with it. So in the spring, I attended a BLM meeting regarding the proposed Jackalope Wind Energy project that's going to take place from east of the Jim Bridger Power Plant in Sweetwater County into Carbon County. It encompasses 293,100 acres of land with 166,100 administered under the BLM. They proposed to place 213 wind generators. The reason why I was a little bit upset about this is were talking about starting the NEPA process in September of 2023, and this was April of 2024 when they had the public meeting. And we were still in the debate over the Rock Springs RMP, and they had just gathered up enough of our signatures and our thoughts on the RMP and hadn't done a record of decision yet. So we were a little bit upset with this plan going into effect without knowing what the RMP was going to come out with the record of decision. So by October, with the uncertainty of the presidential race, I thought it was important that we bring this resolution to let the state know that we really want to have dispatchable baseload power that is consistent with our energy needs in Wyoming. Wyoming's economy has long been at the mercy of the federal administration changes swinging between boom and bust cycles. When will the state take control of its own clean energy production to create a stable, resilient economy? We have a unique opportunity now that the president, as Donald J. Trump, is in office and promoting energy independence. Let us seize the moment to establish sound policies through our state legislature that will secure Wyoming's energy future and insulate our state from the economic uncertainty of federal policy changes. And I'd like to kind of address a little bit of the wind and the solar. what I'd like to know is there a plan in the state? So when these pieces of equipment come to their end of life and have to be disposed of, where are we going to dispose all these? Just in the Casper landfill? Is it up to the state to provide a place for the disposal of all these materials when they're at end of life? Or is it going to be the responsibility of the project management or the private landowners? So them are some of my concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marquette, correct?
Marquardt.
Marquardt. You know, one of these days I'll get everything right, but it's going to be a while. Marquardt, that's a cool name. Thank you very much. Let's see what the committee has. Committee, any questions for Ms. Marquardt? And do you have any answer to her question? Okay, Senator Boner.
Yeah, it's my understanding that's up to the private company, and, there's opportunities for, local landfills, and being from the Powder River Basin, I'm especially excited about the possibility of using, old coal mines, which is another revenue source for our coal mines, and that supports a lot of jobs locally throughout Commerce and Campbell counties. So I'm kind of excited about that idea, frankly. As far as the landowner goes, that's part of the negotiation, I'd say, between the company that does, builds a wind farm, and you have all sorts of bonding requirements, reclamation requirements, the same as any other industrial activity that you'll find. So hopefully that answers a little bit of the question. It is a responsibility of the private company, and there are rules and regulations the state has to ensure that that cleanup actually occurs through bonding requirements and things like that. So no different than, say, oil or gas or coal mining, uranium mining, those sorts of things.
Thank you, Senator Boner. Ms. Marquardt, we go back to you for a sec if you wish.
Okay, so my next question, Mr. Chairman, is then if these companies decide just to take off and leave or they go bankrupt, then the bonding that these companies place through the state would be, the state would step in and take care of the cleanup?
Does anybody have an answer for the lady?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe
Senator Boner?
I believe that's the Industrial Siding Council, and I'm unaware of that actually happening, but yes, that's why you have the bond. That's the reason for it existing.
How are we
Thank
doing?
you.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony. I'm not seeing any other questions for you, but really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who's next online?
Mr. Chairman, the next person is Jonathan Lang.
Mr. Lang, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me adequately?
Yes, sir, we do. Please go ahead.
All right. I speak for myself as a pastor in Kemmer, and I'm speaking in favor of this joint resolution. And I want to bring up two reasons for it. First is for the sake of truth. The second is for the sake of families. Regarding the truth of the specific claims about that underlying green energy policies, we don't really have time to test them here. And I was disappointed recently, I think it was about a year ago, that there was an attempt to organize a public debate, and there wasn't the willingness either. And so I look forward to today when we can actually talk about these things. But without this debate, many lawmakers and government officials and policy advisors are saying, well, the truth doesn't matter. What matters is what the market thinks is true. I've actually heard that phrase. And as a human being, this is offensive to me. Truth matters. It's dehumanizing and demoralizing to chase after money, whether it's public or private money, federal or state, by giving lip service to what you personally don't believe is true, and diminishes us as a state and as individuals. And I want to just emphasize here that this resolution is not about stopping these projects, but it's about opposing the subsidization of these projects. And I think it is the subsidization of these projects which hinders the discussions that we need to have. Well, that said, then I also support this resolution for the sake of families. I mentioned that I'm a pastor in Kemmer. In the great energy producing states like Wyoming, these green policies have a much greater impact on the citizens than they do in states that are primarily consumers. So when policies force consumers to pay higher prices for energies, those consumers can simply tighten their belts. But when those same policies close coal mines and cap oil wells, the people who produce those products then lose their entire livelihood. And, you know, Kemmerer coal mine used to be the largest mine in the state. And I've watched it decline, and now it's threatened to close. And I'm just talking about the impact on the lives of local people, friends and family that I know. So that's why I'm here today. I serve as a church in Kemmerer, and I've seen it firsthand, the economic disruption, family disruption that's caused by these drastic changes in energy policy, and the people of Wyoming are hurt by them. And so I'm simply asking that the governor oppose the future promotion and subsidization of these commercial wind and solar farms so that we can discuss these things on a level playing field. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Let's see if any committee members? Not seeing any questions? Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Any final time on the testimony? Nothing online? Committee, you've heard the testimony. What is your pleasure? Got a motion by Dockstader. Discussion? Senator Landon?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate the good senator bringing the bill. I'm really struggling to get there, and here's a couple of the reasons. I know that every day this governor is doing exactly what is stated in this resolution already. I suspect that this came about in part because this governor at one time said that it's going to take every form of energy that we can produce in Wyoming. We need every electron we can get, and this committee knows that better than I think most in the Wyoming legislature. I also think about all the miles and the effort put in by my colleague from over in Star Valley, who has worked so diligently for hours and hours and days to try to do whatever he could to keep that mine going over in Kemmerer, among so many other things. So it just feels like, folks, that we're already doing this. I get a little heartburn when I drive up across the Shirley Basin and I see all those windmills and they block my view of Elk Mountain. I don't do cartwheels over that. But I also kind of feel as the governor does, which is that I think Wyoming would be better positioned to produce whatever electrons we can in a good, responsible way. I guess I have to stand up a little bit for the governor on this one. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Boner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On in support of the resolution as it's written, I certainly don't agree with all the testimony. I have to say, I think that we have to be aware of everybody's property rights, and if organizations that represent our ag producers, I think would reinforce the fact, say when it comes to wind and solar, the property owner, unlike split estate situations with our extractive industries, is completely in the driver's seat. So that landowner can actually do a lot of good for their neighbor. They have a lot of negotiating power, and I'd like to work more with my colleagues, maybe a little bit to the east, to really reinforce that, so we don't have that tension, and because it really is unnecessary in most situations. So that being said, I mentioned before, look up, the Department of Energy has an annual report on, say, wind power, and once again, look at the effect the subsidies have on holding back innovation. Look at the price of wind and how it dropped precipitously from 2015 to 2020, right when those tax credits were about to go away. And I think there's a strong argument for having that sort of all the above approach without the subsidies. So I'll be for it. I think that the resolution as written is a good statement, and I look forward to moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Anybody else? Take it we have no amendments, no further deal. I'd ask that we call the roll.
This is a roll call vote on Senate Joint Resolution 4, resolution on commercial-based power load, resolution on commercial-based load power generation. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Dockstader.
Aye.
Senator Landon.
No.
Senator Steinmetz. Chairman Case.
Aye.
You have 4 ayes and 1 no.
Thank you very much. It's passed this committee. Thank you for your good work. I did send to you, Senator, and members of the committee, a study that looks at the land intensity of different forms of electrical generation. It might help you in your arguments. The scale's not very dramatic, but it's a logarithmic scale, so it's actually takes and compresses things. So take a look at that. It might help your arguments. There are lots at play on this issue and whether we're taxing these resources enough. And this is a very big area. In the eminent domain, that's another big area. So congratulations on your work, and we'll look forward to working with you in the future. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 145, Local Government Investment in Equities. Who's going to help us with this bill? Well, that good sponsor is right here. Thank you. Welcome, Senator Nethercott.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning,
Is
Corporations
your mic
Committee.
on?
My mic is on. Can you hear me okay?
Pull it up close. Sometimes they just don't grab you too well. Thank you. Go ahead,
speak
Senator
louder.
Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, you have in front of you Senate File 145, which authorizes local governments to invest in equities, similar to the state. As we know, we are rapidly depleting their revenue sources from sales and use tax and property taxes, in both chambers as we speak. And so our cities, towns, and counties are certainly looking at ways to have more autonomy over their financial futures. And they've looked to the state as an example, and certainly we have led on that front in understanding that 1/3 to 1/4 of our revenues come from investment earnings. And certainly our cities, towns, and counties would like to follow in our footsteps. This is not a new conversation for the state or cities, towns, and counties. And years ago, we passed investment pools through the state treasurer's office that authorized cities, towns, and counties to participate in that, referred to as YO-STAR, through the treasurer's office. That has not been very effective for them, and that relationship is not working as well as we had hoped it to be. The treasurer's office is here, cities, towns, and counties are here, and they can speak for themselves. My observation from serving from the Capital Finance and Investments Committee, who's evaluated this issue for the last few years, indicates that neither party really wants to work together or be responsible for each other's investment earnings. And so this bill was brought before the CapFin Committee, and it failed, and I was a no vote on it. And in further conversations with the cities, towns, and counties, realized that they really do need a vehicle to have ownership and the ability to invest their earnings on behalf of their constituents as well. And so this bill is before you with that authorization. That's what it does. We did work the bill through the expertise in the treasurer's office in order to provide some appropriate sideboards to their abilities to invest, recognizing this is can be considered a pretty high-risk area to delve into, the state being a very different position of having the expertise both in-house and then through our investment funds committee and other investment professionals to help us guide us with such significant investment opportunities, recognizing the cities, towns, and counties would not necessarily have access to that level of expertise or objectivity associated with monies that could be charged to the cities, towns, and counties for the investments of those funds. So there's hesitation there. So working with the expertise within the STO, providing those sideboards. And if we look really on page 2, lines 6 through 18, this is the bill. And it allows for the investment of equities, including stocks of corporations. Investments made under this paragraph shall comply with all provisions of investment policy statements applicable to local government investing adopted by the State Loan and Investment Board. So this is really the guide star for cities, towns, and counties when investing. Of course, we know that the State Loan and Investment Board works closely with the Treasurer's Office and the expertise in there in order to have a responsible investment policy. And so we're requiring the cities, towns, and counties to comply with that. We also authorize the political subdivision may establish an investment advisory board that they see, so it's not maybe just subject to the local treasurer and the governing bodies, the city council, that they can have, maybe create a board with more expertise to provide some guidance. Investments made under this paragraph shall not be subject to this statutory section, or we reference Wyoming Statute 91419, that refers to the WyoStar accounts. And then there's a statement that nothing in this paragraph shall be construed to limit or alter the state treasurer's authority, with the, just a little belt and suspenders there for the treasurer's office, recognizing that this statute doesn't have anything to do with the STO. I was able to speak with the governor's office, who provides counsel both to the SLIB board as well. And they have some proposed amendments that I've reviewed and discussed and fully support. One of those identified, which just goes on to page 3 in section 3. So we're on lines 4 through 6 on page 3, which is the striking of the word of the investment funds committee from that section. I think that's prudent. And so section 3 would read, the state treasurer and the state loan investment board shall take all actions necessary to implement this act. The IFC doesn't need to be involved with this, and nor are they. So I think that's an appropriate amendment that I would ask you to make.
Thank you.
In addition, good Chairman, I guess I'm happy to stand for questions right now, and then I'll discuss some of the amendments that were presented to me by the governor's office, and I can let perhaps Ms. Anderson join us up here as well.
Okay, any questions for the sponsor at this point? Senator Lannon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senator, I'm sitting here wondering what would prohibit a municipality, for example, utilizing local talent through this board that they might create. They could certainly work with local financial advisors, could they not?
Mr. Chairman,
Go
through.
ahead.
Yes, they certainly could. That is, I think, what, in full candor, represented some concerns to the CapFin committee, was the aggressive solicitation of these services by those providers within our state and outside, understanding that this is, for a lot of these communities, a significant sum of money, and it is a good business opportunity for some of the local talent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Is there anybody else? Can I ask a couple of just questions? So what is 91419? It's on line 15, page 2. My folio doesn't have that. It stops at 418. So is that something new? What is 91419? Or maybe there's a renumbering.
I intended to bring my statute book, Mr. Chairman. According to my research of 91419, I believe it refers to the WyoStar account.
That's what I was thinking. Okay. So, Senator, is it fair to say that this would be the pooled account of all the municipalities? Is that what we're talking about? We're not really talking about the town of Hudson investing in equities, are we?
Mr. Chairman, we are. So just for clarity, 91419, which I believe references the WyoStar account that some of us may be familiar with, is an account that the legislature created that authorized the cities, towns, and counties to invest, pool their accounts that would be managed by the treasurer's office. Long-term investment fund pools to invest in equities through the expertise of the treasurer's office. That relationship has not been successful,
Oh,
and for a variety of reasons. But what's clear is that the treasurer's office, and fairly so, doesn't want to be responsible for investing political subdivisions investments. Their job is on the state's accounts, right? And that's where we want them to be. And so there's, they're getting spread too thin in being investment equities investors on behalf of every government entity in the state of Wyoming. And so recognizing that resistance and recognizing the, let's say, general unwillingness of the cities, towns, and counties to to continue to kind of be under that umbrella and want more independent autonomy, this is why this bill is in front of you, that they have not felt that YOSTAR has been a useful resource for them, and they would like more flexibility in investing their investments in equities through their own judgment.
Okay. And then paragraph Romanet 28. What's that going to be? Do you know?
Mr. Chairman, I explained that. I thought, I don't know what that is. I tried to find that. It's not entirely clear to me. It could be a typo, but
Okay.
I'm certain we can find that it's in this statutory section, so.
Yeah.
And I left my statute book upstairs.
It's all right. I think it's in depositories, but I'll find it.
At any rate, it's not applicable to the
Right.
bill, so.
Right. But exceptions
hopefully
are a big deal sometimes.
Hopefully it won't trip us up too much.
We've got staff on top of this, so that's great.
Thank you.
Can we maybe have your other witness come forward and join you while you're looking that up?
I think, Mr. Chairman, we have a lot of witnesses here, but at this time, I would ask Ms. Anderson from the governor's office to come forward.
Okay. Ms. Anderson, see you way in the back. How are you? Good, good to see you. We'll give you the opportunity. Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Betsy Anderson. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and General Counsel for Governor Gordon. I do want to start with the governor supports local governments investing in equities. He always has. I think that was the intent of the amendment to the Constitution he did when he was treasurer. Others disagreed, but we got there with some subsequent amendments. I know I did follow the interim committee bills. There was a lot. They went through a lot of different iterations. It seems, I do see this, and I think the governor sees this somewhat as an elegant solution to provide, to include the parameters of local government investing in equities within the investment policies of the SLIB. And maybe it's just passing the buck, but either way, I think we're good with, he is comfortable with the SLIB taking on that responsibility. And as you know, the SLIB has an investment consultant. They just re-upped with RV Coons, and RV Coons by statute is required to review the investment policy, and they would, I think, play an instrumental role in putting together the investment policy statement for local government investing in equities and what those parameters and restrictions look like. I did speak with Senator Nethercott about just 3 issues or concerns that we saw with the bill. The first one was that we wanted to make sure that the state does not, or the SLIB, does not have any liability for any losses incurred by the local governments if they were to come forward and try to make the claim that they suffered these losses due to the parameters or restrictions within the investment policy statement. And I understand there may be no basis for that type of claim anyway, but I think it would serve well to actually have a statement in the statute that says that the state will not take on the responsibility or liability for those losses. There is some similar language. If you look at the rules for the local government, the investment pools that the Treasurer's Office has for those local government investing pools, there is some similar language about risk and about how the local governments will not be reimbursed or paid by the state for any losses they incur. And so it'd be similar language, I don't think exactly to that, but something along the lines, the state does not have any liability or responsibility for those losses. So that would be, I had 3 concerns, that was the first one. The second one is on page 2 and then over to page 3, it talks about the SLIB adapting policy in accordance with 94716. When you go to 94716, it really talks about state funds. And I think there needs to be some language added in there that makes it clear that the SLIB has the authority to have investment policies with regards to local government funds. I tried to go through and see if everywhere it said state funds, you could just say, and local government funds. It doesn't work because the state funds are just so complex with $30 billion and I don't know how many funds they do now, 10 or something, that it didn't work. So I do have a proposal for a paragraph that just could be added, and I'm happy to provide that to you, but it just says, it would be 94716G. The investment policy statement shall include requirements and conditions for the investment in equities by political subdivisions as provided under WS 94831A29. And just to make it clear that they do have that authority, happy to provide this language if you'd like.
Please do, we'll kick that up. Why don't you do your third thing?
The third thing, Senator Nethercott has already mentioned, which was the reference to the Investment Funds Committee. Didn't think that was appropriate. They are fiduciaries for state funds. They have a lot of responsibilities. I almost worry we give them too much responsibility at some point. And to add on, because they are a volunteer board, they're just paid for their travel. And so I worry that putting a fiduciary responsibility on them for local governments would not be appropriate.
So you both have tag teamed that, so.
And Mr. Chairman, just to
Yes.
go back, if you were to look at this language at 94716G that the Ellis is just passing out, I think that might require a change in the title to the bill to reflect that you're adding that authority or.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Does anybody in the audience need to know that language? Probably will be coming up, so do we have any extras? Do you have any extra for folks in the audience? Maybe could help, maybe somebody could help back there? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You bet. I just want, let me check to see if any further questions for Ms. Anderson? None? Okay, back to you, Senator.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have no objection or concerns about the proposed request from Ms. Anderson in the governor's office and would ask that we make those amendments accordingly. I have looked at the statute book, and as I anticipated, that particular Romanet does not exist in statute. So I do think it's a typo, and I believe it's just one additional little I. And so what the statute ends at Romanet 27.
That's what I saw.
And so, and I believe that is what was intended when we look at Romanet 27 under that statute. So, and what this, I think, refers to a separate investment pool within the state treasurer's office, recognizing that there are a couple, WildStar 1, WildStar 2.
Right.
And so that's what that's referring to.
So what line 14, page 2 should read, instead of Romanet 28, it should be Romanet 27.
Correct,
With two little i's.
correct.
Okay, we'll take that up too. Oh, you got people flying at you. Yes, sir. Would you like to testify on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, just to provide some clarity, the reference to this provision.
Could you give us your name, please?
I apologize. Bill Pilger, General Counsel, State Treasurer's Office.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. The reference to XXVIII is actually language that was added last legislative session.
So it's not in the books.
It's in the supplement, correct?
Yeah.
And that provision is the authority for our office to create the WildStar, what we call WildStar 3. And that is the local investment pool for investment in equities. So essentially, the bill before you today is the alternative ability of local government entities to invest outside of the pool, this other language. And that would be the carve-out and the exception and why it's referenced in the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Pilger. Am I saying that right?
You are. Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chairman.
much, Mr. Pilger. Do you have any other testimony on the bill? As long as you're here.
As long as I'm here, otherwise, and I don't know that I want to speak on behalf of the office, but we're certainly supportive of the bill and the amendments that Ms. Anderson has proposed today.
Okay.
So, and I believe our Chief Investment Officer is also available and may comment at some point too.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pilger.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Nethercott.
do you think we could ask just briefly, and maybe this is to the CIA, how many WildStar accounts do we have now?
Sounds like 3. But Mr. Pilger?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we have 3 different pools, well, 3 different programs. As far as accounts, I'm sorry, I'm looking at our deputy here. There are numerous accounts. Wildstar 1 has the most. Wildstar 2 has a lot less. It's a longer-term investment horizon. Wildstar 3, because it was just enacted this last session and went in effect July 1 of '24, the program hasn't even taken off yet, so we're actually in the rulemaking process.
Thank you. I think we have somebody else that needs to testify too. Can we make a little room? Don, you wish to testify? Okay. Who else? Who should? So we got the desk cleared.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, may we bring in Patrick Fleming, our Chief Investment Officer?
Certainly may. Let's have Mr. Fleming. I see a smiling face. Got a great tie, great shirt, looking pretty powerful up there. Let's get him online.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Fleming, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrick Fleming, CIO for the Treasurer's Office.
Can we turn that down just seconds? With this room, it's overwhelming. Okay, go ahead.
Test. Is that good, Mr. Chairman? Is that better for you?
You bet, much better.
All right, well, thank you. First of all, I would just like to thank Senator Nethercott and the Capital Finance Committee for doing this diligent work that they've done. They've had 2 or 3 interim meetings discussing this topic with numerous people opining on their opinion. So I really think where we're at right now has been a wonderful process with a lot of people's views. So I just want to thank everyone involved on that and their hard work. Just for a little background on this. So Wildstar 1 is just a money market. Wildstar 2 was the next progression that would just be a short-term bond fund. So it'll allow these entities to then go into short-term bonds. The returns have been, very positive in Wildstar 2. So I think the difference that the senator was referring to, that you do have to go through various different individuals to get the process, transferring the money and so forth. So for enabling them to do it on their own, which we have allowed them to do as Betsy was talking about in the SLIB, enables them to just do it on their own under the parameters set by the SLIB. So that's a wonderful process. With Wildstar R3, which is the equity investment, and now this bill, it just allows them to invest in equities. And everyone knows volatility of equities is much higher, much more risk. So working with the SLIB, working with our consultants, I think this is a great process to make sure that we have rulemaking, the rules that are in our IPS under Section 21 that would just fulfill this equity investment. And so with that, I just want to make sure that this is just, prior precedent. We already have it for fixed income, and it would just be the addition of equities. And so I'd stand for any questions if anyone has any questions on far as the process of what would be done in the SLIB board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fleming. Any questions for Mr. Fleming? Not seeing any from the committee. Thanks a lot for joining us. You might stay by. We have a county commissioner walking up, you guys. Commissioner, would you please introduce yourself and give us your testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert Short, Commerce County. I also represent the Wyoming County Commissioners Association as the Vice President. We stand in full support of this bill. We believe the work that Senator Nethercott has put into it is both prudent and useful. As we see this changing landscape associated with revenues available for counties, municipalities to perform the statutorily defined requirements of their jobs, we find more and more challenges in being able to fund those positions, those particular functions. We believe that investments in equities provide us a greater opportunity to stabilize incomes. Of course, none of us are portfolio managers. I don't believe any of us are experts in financial markets. However, some of us on our own personal endeavors do invest, and we utilize expertise both locally and perhaps nationally to advise us on how to invest in what we believe may be our greatest opportunity for return. Volatility, whether it be in equities or in precious metals or in commodities, is a given. We have to understand that there is no perfect anything other than when I'm asleep and my eyes are closed, then it's perfect. There are no challenges. But we know that we can invest in index funds, whether it be the S&P, the NASDAQ, or Dow. which historically have shown returns in greater than 10%. Of course, again, volatility is part of the game. We know this, and we have to be willing to accept the fact that when you're investing the people's money, you have to do it in a conscious way that both gives you an opportunity to grow that investment so that you can perform the work for the people, but also taking into account the fact that you are exposing yourself to potential risk. We also believe that advisors are incredibly important, and we would seek out counsel because none of us are really interested in putting the people's money at risk any more than is necessary, whether it's at risk in precious metals, commodities, or ETFs. We know that there is risk, but we're hopeful that the return outweighs the risk if it's done in a prudent fashion, much like has been demonstrated by the State Treasurer's Office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for your work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Short. Any questions for the commissioner? Thank you very much. Ms. Harpstreet.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ashley Harpstreet with the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. WAM stands strongly in support of Senate File 145 and continuation of the constitutional amendment that was passed 2 years ago that allows local governments to directly invest in equities. Mr. Chairman, together with the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, the Treasurer's Office, the former chairwoman of the Select Committee of Capital Financing and Investments, also the bringer of this bill, and many of our bright minds within our own organization, we have vetted this opportunity to provide a safe way to provide the most bang for our buck we can get with our taxpayer dollars. Just like the state is able to provide 30% of their bills with the strategic use of their investment funds, our locals would like the same opportunities to stretch the dollar of the taxpayer, again, in a safe way. Additionally, when it takes years to plan to save for fun things like sewer, water, infrastructure, landfills, road maintenance, this would be, as they say, another tool in the toolbox. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few members with us today that can explain a little bit at the local level how they would leverage this tool, and I'll stand for any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Harpstreet? And who else would like to testify?
We have the mayor of Cheyenne with us, Mr. Collins, and then we also have City of Casper, I believe, is online, their finance director that's been very intimately involved in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome. Would it be too much to ask that when you appear before a legislative committee, you put on a tie?
I thought about that this morning, sir, and I apologize.
You know, it's a little bit of a matter of respect, and I appreciate that.
I understand, and I will.
To you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Patrick Collins, Mayor of the City of Cheyenne, and I'm speaking in favor of Senate File 145. The voters approved allowing local governing bodies like ours the ability to invest in equities. We've been waiting for the rules to be drafted so we can take advantage of this opportunity. First, we're looking at the state as an example of how to do this. We currently use a hired professional manager to invest our reserves, and through an RFP, we selected Federated Hermes to do that work. We have an investment committee that includes professionals in the investment world to help guide our decisions. Mr. Fleming has served on that committee for years, and Mr. Jeff Prince is a local investment professional. They help us set the benchmarks, and we help hold those vendors to those benchmarks. Investing in equities would make a huge difference for Cheyenne ratepayers in our sanitation department. One example is the closure of our landfill. That'll happen probably 40 years from now. The cost of that closure will cost tens of millions of dollars for the building of our new landfill and the closure of our old landfill and the EPA requirements to do that. We put money away every month to prepare for those costs, but we know when the time comes, we'll not have enough money to do that. Investing our dollars today in equities would provide much more robust return than other current treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. The benefit of the higher returns would be more funds in our landfill, lowering sanitation rates for future residents to pay for the opening and the closing of our current landfill. I'm confident the State Land and Investment Board will propagate rules that would allow local governing bodies to invest in equities where doing so makes sense, while protecting the residents of a local governing body from officials who don't have the background to properly invest and make those decisions. I appreciate this bill and creating the path forward as approved by the voters of our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Thank you very much. Thanks to you both. Anybody else like to testify on this bill? Anybody else in the audience? Is there anybody else online?
We have two people online. The first person is Jill Johnson from Casper.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson?
Good morning, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
First of all, thank you for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in front of this committee. I have been following this bill for, not this particular bill, but this solution for quite some time. So I am anxious to see this come to fruition. So I think we've already heard a lot about where we are and what's already out there. Amendment A did pass in 2022, and we've been trying to do what the voters have asked us to do. However, we haven't gotten any guidance from the legislature to give us the ability to move forward. So what we currently know is out there. We have the YOSTAR 3, which was passed last year. However, as has already been stated, there hasn't been the rules haven't been finalized at this point. So we also worked on the interim session for 2 bills there, and those were both tabled. So again, we haven't had any relief there either. I am really excited about the SLIB taking on the investment policy option and allowing us to create some rules around equity investing through that policy. This is not something new. We actually are able to invest in corporate bonds through the SLIB policy. So I'm assuming this would just be an additional section within the policy that would include equity investments, along with some guardrails, which we are very open to make sure that we are safe in our investing. So what we at the City of Casper really would like to see, we would like local control of our investment dollars. We would not invest at the same risk level as the state. I think that was something that throughout the interim period, we didn't really get into what type of investments. And the type of investment that I would do at the city, at the local level, is much different than what the state does at the state level. So I would be much more conservative in my risk management. We are very open to this option, and we are hopeful that you will move this forward and approve it. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any questions for you. Committee, any questions? We're good. Stand by, though. Thank you. Who else is online?
Mr. Chairman, now we have Mark Cowan from Rock Springs.
And it's Cowan?
It is, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Cowan.
Mark Cowan, Sweetwater County Treasurer. Just standing to testify in favor of this bill. I've testified the last several years to allow us to invest in equities. I think you've heard great testimony on it. I'll stand for any questions, but I am in favor of doing this.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Any questions? Looks like you're good. Anybody else wish to testify on the bill? Anybody else wish to testify on this bill? Okay. Committee, you've heard the testimony. What is your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Got a motion by Landon. Discussion. We have some proposed amendments. I think if I heard correctly, let's get the sponsor up to help us work through them. But if I heard correctly, she approves of all of them, I think. Back to you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, probably just for ease, I would start with page 3, striking reference to the Investment Funds Committee on lines 4 and 5. My mic is on.
I'm sorry. It's just you're a quiet person sometimes. And we believe you. We just need you to pull it close. I know it's annoying, but.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
We're an annoying committee, so just welcome and join us.
So page 3.
That's much better.
Section 3, lines 4 and 5. Strike the 4 words, the Investment Funds Committee.
Somebody like to offer that motion?
So moved.
Got by Landon. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's carried. Back to you, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then I would refer your attention to the handout that you received from Ms. Anderson from the Governor's Office that provides the proposed language. And
where does that language go?
that's what we're deciding, Mr. Chairman, and so we can look at this together and just say, probably in a new section, what I would do is a new section 4. And so section 4 would become section 5. So after section 3, I would add this provision. So on page 3, after section 3, insert a new section 4 with that language.
Okay,
And then section 4 would become section 5.
I think that works, and if LSO takes a look at it and they have any other change, we can do that.
And then, Mr. Chairman,
Do you want to take up that one, get her done? Get that amendment done? I'm looking for a motion on that amendment. Got a motion, who was the so moved? Boner. Discussion. Any discussion? All those in favor signify.
Mr. Chairman?
Hold on.
I'm sorry, I just had a question because we, part of the testimony was on page 3, on line 2, where it said in accordance with 9-4-716. As I understood, Ms. Anderson's testimony was that that should actually be 9-4-716G, which is the amendment that she proposed, which is, it's fine. I think you could put it in both places. I'm just clarifying that what she said, what she testified was that 9-4-716
Right.
itself was not appropriate.
So, Ms. Sharp, do you have a better idea about where it should go? We're listening to you.
Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Sharp was identifying, tell me if I'm wrong, that the reference to 9-4-716 should be 716G.
Yeah, we need to make that as a conforming amendment as part of this.
And then, Mr. Chairman, if I can,
We'll
instead
see.
of what I proposed, then after we add the addition to 716 and the reference to subsection G, then that sentence. Is that correct? Is that your understanding?
Mr. Chairman, I think we'll have to let LSO figure out where to put it because it will be a new section. So LSO will stick it in the appropriate
I
place.
suspect it's going to be a new section, but it's not going to be a section 4. That's my guess. But how about if we do this, Senator? Just bear with us. Sometimes we're not the best committee in the legislature, but we think we are. So, Senator, let's adopt the language and also adopt the conforming amendment on page 2, line 10, to add the small g after 9-4-7-16, and kind of let LSO figure out where that language should go. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Would that be your motion, Senator Bonner? I knew it was. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, clean up, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of letting LSO determine where it should go in the bill, what I would ask for is another conforming amendment at the discretion of LSO for which section it should go into. A statement that says substantially as follows. Participants acknowledge there is risk associated with investing. There is no guaranteed rate of return, and participants expose their investments to losses as well as gains. And that's at the request of Ms. Anderson as well. That comes from the Treasurer's Office local investment pool rules. And they just want to make sure that that's crystal clear. And so I don't have any objection to that. And then a further statement that says all risks associated with the pool are assumed by the participant.
Can I discuss this with you a little bit?
Yeah.
So that language sounds like it's a finding almost of fact, that anybody that goes in this pool acknowledges that. But they don't acknowledge it till they actually submit money to the pool. So can you make it, would it be better to make that more action oriented, like any participant in the pool shall acknowledge?
So, Mr. Chairman, what I would say is
to you.
there is no pool.
Oh, okay, well, pool's a wrong term, but
Yeah, so participants acknowledge there is a risk associated with investing in equities. So if you want to make that futuristic, I leave that to the committee's discretion. That's the request from the governor's office from Ms. Anderson.
let's get her back up here, because I hear with the words, Senator, and I know that I'm on legal thin ice, but it sounds like we're making a finding about people that participate in this program what we really want is the people that participate in this program to acknowledge that there is this risk. And it might be a fine difference, I'm not sure. Could
That
we
may-
get Ms. Anderson to help me?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Now,
Go
it's
ahead yourself.
Chairman's prerogative. You may be thinking that it is an acknowledgement because I said acknowledge. And the statement is participants acknowledge there is a risk associated with investing in equities. That's the statement. And then there's a couple more statements, but that's the concept.
Might be a legal fine point. Ms. Anderson, can you help me? Maybe I'm stumbling.
Mr. Chairman, and my apologies to Senator Nethercott. I did not get to this till late last night, so I only showed her these changes this morning. Federal government had other ideas about my time yesterday, so so what I showed her was the language that is currently in the state treasurer's rules for the WildStar programs. It is not exactly the same since those are rules and it is an acknowledgement and disclosure, but it's the same concept. What I envisioned for this bill, this statute, would be to say that the state is not liable or responsible for any losses suffered by these local government political subdivisions pursuant to they're investing under the investment policy statement or under the statute. I don't know that there is any liability there, but I just don't want to run the risk that a local government says, oh, this loss is because of the restriction or the parameter or the limitation you put in the investment policy statement. I wouldn't have suffered that loss otherwise. It's your fault. And so I think that's just what I'm looking for, is to confirm that the state is not liable or responsible for any losses they suffer.
Yeah, and Ms. Anderson, I have a little bit of heartburn on that one, I think. That's like we're granting immunity. So, we're going to do this for the local governments, but we're not going to be responsible. We're just helping you out. And I don't think we can actually do that, but maybe we can. I'm not sure it's the right place. Senator Nethercott, can you help
Mr.
me?
Chairman, the state certainly can do that and fundamentally does. In fact, all states do. That's called sovereign immunity. That said, I don't want to confuse it all here. The reason why this bill has not been successful in the past is because of the concerns over the losses that these small government entities could sustain. And that's a hard loss. And where are they going to look for recovery? And who are they going to blame for those losses? Under this structure, I don't think that there would be a viable argument in any way that the state would be responsible, and Ms. Anderson and I had that discussion. That said, I don't think it's ill-advised or wrong for us to make a statement in this statutory section that says all risks associated with investing in equities are assumed by the government entity. And therefore, that's clear as day, and it's also kind of a warning that's in the statute. So I don't think that that's inappropriate, I don't think it's wrong, and I think it clarifies where the responsibility lies with this new authority that they may be given.
I think I could go with that language.
Great. Want me to state it again?
Yes.
And so let's talk about where to place it. And I guess we'll be consistent with the conforming amendment for LSO to determine its appropriate placement. But the statement would be, all risks associated with the investment of equities shall be assumed by the government entity.
Okay, I need someone to offer that.
I would make that motion.
Senator Landon offers. Discussion? I think it might work, kind of in the middle of everything we've had so far. So further discussion, Senator Landon?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that the good senator was maybe going there with the statement in front and combining both of those statements into one amended piece of language, and it seemed like that would maybe be something we would consider. The acknowledgement statement followed by, the state's not going to assume the risk. Does that make sense, or do we do them separately?
Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're overthinking it.
Yeah, I think we just do this.
I think it's sufficient to just do that, in my opinion.
So,
Thank you.
Senator Dockstader, we're taking up the government investment in equities. We've had a couple of amendments so far that they haven't been of great significance in terms of the policy of the bill. And now we're fussing back and forth about a statement to be included that says that local governments realize, you know, the risks the local governments have in this is their risk. So, and we're kind of almost ready for the question, I think. Let's get a clarification. Senator Nethercott, do you want to do it one more time?
All risks associated with investing in equities are assumed by the government entity.
We good, Ms. Sharp? And we don't have a place where that goes exactly.
Just needed to vote on that amendment.
Yeah. So I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that's carried. Thanks to both of you for helping us think that through. I think this would work. We'll find out where they come up with, and then we'll go from there. Anything else on the bill, Senator Nethercott?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do think that the people have spoken with providing this authorization to cities, towns, and counties, and I think it's time for the legislature to respond to how the people voted and provide them the specific authority with the appropriate sidebars.
Thank you, Senator. Okay. Senator, any discussion from the committee? Senator Landon.
Just a quick piece of discussion, Mr. Chairman. I'm fully supportive of this bill. It's a big priority for my community. And quite honestly, I don't think I could have gotten it there. So I wanted to commend the senator for working with the treasurer and with all the entities involved and getting the bill to this point. I think the guardrails are good, and I think it's a good opportunity for our local governments. So I'm going to support the bill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Let's call Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was a no on this, and the CapFin committee, I'll be a no on it today. We don't have YO Star 3 online yet, and I think that that addresses some of these. I'd like to see that come online before we take this motion, this by the legislature, and then we would have time to come back if they don't feel like that addresses their needs. So I'll be a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have statements? Let's go ahead and call the roll.
This is a roll call vote on Senate File 145, Local Government's Investment in Equities. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Dockstader.
Aye.
Senator aye.
Aye.
Senator Landon.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
No.
Chairman Case.
Aye.
You have 4
Thank you.
ayes and 1 no.
Mr. Chairman?
We'll run that amendment by you when we get a draft, okay?
And Mr. Chairman, what
Go ahead.
I would offer on that amendment is I can, because I provided those amendments to you, I'm more than happy to also explain the amendment on the floor and explain the bill as well.
I think that's probably the way it'll go. I'll probably move the bill and the standing committee amendment. We'll turn it over to you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see you later. The next bill for our consideration, Senate File 146, Consumer Rental Purchase Agreement Act Amendments. Senator Boney, you're on this bill. How do you want to handle that? Okay. You don't really have to. The reason I did that with the net metering discussion is that was so inflammatory. I just thought I shouldn't be at the table, so I'm perfectly comfortable if you want to do it from there. It's not really a
I
requirement.
suggested that Senator Case should have maybe been out in the hall.
Yeah, he thought I should leave the room. So that's not really
Okay.
precedental, but Senator Boner, if you'd like to talk about your bill.
That's probably better, so I don't forget anything up here, Mr. Chairman. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is Senate File 146. This deals with these types of businesses where you can rent to own different, usually household objects, furniture, refrigerators, washing machines, those sorts of things. Even had the chance to go visit one on break here in our capital city, learn a little bit more about it. But the problem that we're dealing with this bill is that the last time we updated our Consumer Rental Purchase Agreement Act was in 1996. It has not been updated since then, and so obviously, this language is prior to the time when we began to routinely conduct business online, and there's a lot of just outdated requirements in the statute. So the bill does two basic things. It clarifies how rental purchase transaction rules apply to this online world with licensing. It also modernizes transactions disclosure rules by using digital disclosures as a potential substitute for the paper tags that are currently required. So this will enhance consumer protections, especially for those who are currently using online means to complete those transactions. And so there's three substantive changes. I'll just go over briefly, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay. So first, it clarifies that whether a rental purchase transaction is in person or online, regardless of that circumstance, the merchant has to have a license to operate in Wyoming. Currently, the statute is unclear whether this applies to an online-only business. Second, it makes it clear that all notices and disclosures can be provided digitally, so it doesn't all have to be paper. You can offer an email, and that's just as good. And then finally, it simplifies the licensing of rental purchase merchants who provide services through third-party retailers like a brick-and-mortar furniture store. So it only requires one license for a service provider that has multiple locations rather than a separate license for each location that they're doing business at. And so, once again, the way to modernize the language and recognize the status quo that, quite a few things have changed since 1996. In this area of business is no different. So just a little bit more background. Currently, the Act requires that pricing information, including a weekly or monthly payment, is required to take ownership of the property and be displayed on each item available for purchase. They have tags literally on each and every item, and I think that's appropriate for brick and mortar stores. It's a consumer protection requirement, but we have similar requirements to make sure that the same policy is applied to online transactions in the bill. So that's an important provision. Additionally, rental purchase merchants are now partnering with brick and mortar retailers. So you can have a traditional store that has this option, and they basically contract that out to the online retailer. And so this bill makes it clear that not every product on the retailer's floor needs to have the rental purchase disclosures on them. So because they're transacting online, it's clear that they have that notice. It's just going to be online. So yeah, it's a little update bill. It's been a while, been about almost 30 years, and so it's about time that we update these statutes, which exist to protect consumers. Mr. Chairman, these are, as you can imagine, generally folks who maybe can't afford to buy, a piece of furniture or a washing machine outright, so they use this rent-to-own method. And it's just important that we continue to apply these consumer protections and allow for parity across all different types of ways, whether it be of transacting this business, whether it be brick and mortar store or online. So that's the general premise of the bill, Mr. Chairman. It's up to you. We can go through the bill if you like, or I can pause for questions here.
See if there's anything at this point. Can you go through the bill, or you want Ms. Delancey to go through the bill?
If you
Or
want, Mr. Chairman, we can.
Ms. Delancey, do you want to take us through the bill? Let's go ahead and get you on the mic.
Yes, thank
When
you.
we tell him how beautiful his job is.
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Delancey, and please introduce yourself.
Certainly. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Cindy Delancey. I'm here on behalf of Progressive Holdings LLC, who is in the business of offering the services that Senator Boner just walked through. So I'd have to rely on some of my colleagues in the audience here. Mr. Pickard is also here.
Would you like him
help.
to come forward?
If that would be acceptable to you, Mr. Chairman, it might save some time. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, walking you through the bill, starting on page 1 with the amendment to 4019-102 XI. This
with more and more businesses being transacted online, Mr. Chairman, and digital services, this changes to ensure that the rental purchase agreement can be done in digital format.
And then, Ms. Delancey, Title 40, is that consumer protection, or where's this kind of fitting in the law?
Yes, this is the Consumer Rental Purchase Agreement Act, is Title 40, Chapter 19.
Thank you.
So that's the first change that you'll see on page 2, Mr. Chairman. Then walking down to XII in 102, this definition, the definition of rental purchase property is proposed to ensure the distinction is made between property at a third-party location that is for sale generally, and when it becomes a rental purchase property, when a customer chooses to acquire that property through rental purchase agreement. Then moving down to XIII, this addition is needed to ensure third-party retailer locations are not considered a rental purchase place of business for purposes of the statute. I say that place of business in quotations. Transactions in these stores are to be considered online transactions, since the transaction is typically handled online between the customer and the lease-to-own company.
So can I ask you just kind of a basic here? So there's a store that sells stuff, a brick and mortar store, and then the rental purchase company might be a third party that, and they're kind of the agent, may not be the right word, but it's sort of like when you buy a car and there's a third party financing company that's working with you. Is that possible or not? Maybe that's a reach.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pickard just turned his microphone on, so it signals to me that he would maybe like to chime in on.
Is that okay?
Certainly.
Mr. Pickard, welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dave Pickard. I represent Upbound Group. They went under a holding company, but their brick and mortar stores are Rent-A-Center. And just by way of background, I worked with Chairman Burkhart over in the House for the last 2 sessions to bring this bill forward. The first episode had a lot of back and forth between the Division of Banking, and we worked very diligently throughout that interim to bring to you this product that originally passed the House Committee last session and was the next up on the general file when the House decided to adjourn for the day at about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So it's been vetted over on the House side. It's a good bill. And what it does is updates our statute, as Senator Boner mentioned. Currently, the statutes only apply to the brick and mortar, the traditional rent-a-centers or errands. And there are a few other types of brick and mortar stores operating in Wyoming. This bill represents the updating of those regulations. It's actually a regulatory relief act in that it is prohibiting the new entrants into the market. And when I say new entrants, they've been in existence for well over a decade. Ms. Delancey's client, Progressive, which is considered that third party operator. And here's how it works in this instance. If you go into a big box store, as an example, and you're heading towards a big holiday, your refrigerator goes out, you've got a lot of people coming over, you need a refrigerator. You go into the big box store, you don't have the cash to purchase that item, you don't have enough credit on your credit card to purchase that item, and for some reason or another, you do not qualify for the big box store's credit program to purchase that. There are third-party companies, like Ms. Delancey's, that do offer that, and so it's really a last resort type of purchase in those circumstances. And if you go down the aisles of a big box store and you look at all the refrigerators lined up, if they were engaged in this business as the brick and mortars, the traditional brick and mortars, you'd have a hang tag sitting on that LG refrigerator that says cash price rental price. This act, these updates allow for that to all be electronically. So kind of the last resort purchase option for that customer is to engage utilizing third-party companies in order to make that purchase. So that's really the big meat of this bill, is to modernize it so that those transactions can happen. Now let's remove ourselves from the big box store and go down to the small box store that is in a lot of these rural communities. And I used some examples in Fremont County over in the House last year to really set the tone for what this does. You do have small independent retailers, have them in all the small towns in Wyoming, that can avail themselves to this financing and method to buy that they are not allowed to today. So you might have them competing with the other traditional rent-to-own businesses in their community, or there might not even be any of those rent-to-own businesses. So when you're talking about the independent third party and the on-licensed presence, and then why we changed the definition of a place of business that also includes the retail location, but it does not include an independent third-party retailer location. We're talking about how the licensing is governed under that. So,
Can I interrupt
Mr.
you
Chairman, I
for-
hope that answers some of the questions and lays the stage for the rest of the bill.
That's actually fabulous, but I want to interrupt you for housekeeping. Look, we've got another bill about municipal regulation. It's the city and town regulatory reduction. Let's not get to that bill today. Can we put that off till Friday? Yeah, I know that I see some people might be there, but we're not going to be able to give that any justice today. So thank you. We'll just take it up on Friday. Back to you, Mr. Pickard. Did you have anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I just hope that answers that preliminary question as Ms. Delancey continues to walk through the bill.
Okay, back to you, Ms. Delancey. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Mr. Pickard's input. I have a little bit of a different, just a slight different view on these transactions being a transaction of last resort. I think it's really consumer freedom, that people choose to buy different things how they choose. So by having, this option of a third-party person being able to offer these services to our Main Street businesses, again, really helps kind of keep those downtowns alive and just helps us understand, again, the new e-commerce portion of the world that we live in by trying to help regulate some of these transactions to afford consumer protection through the process. So to your answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
I know that was a long-winded answer between the two of us, but again, we really see this as a very much a pro-business, pro-consumer, pro-Main Street opportunity to just really get this right and modernize how we do business in Wyoming. So with your permission, I'll continue to walk through the bill.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I believe I left off on 4019-102A XIII. Moving now on to XIV, which is in recent, this language helps, like in recent years, rental purchase merchants haven't initiated partnerships with retail stores to provide their customers with an additional option. They have been turned down for a credit transaction because there are specific rules regarding pricing that must be included in pricing labels for rental purchase transaction. This change will ensure that not every product in a retail partner store will be required to have that rental purchase disclosure attached. This is what Mr. Pickard was talking about as far as like, I kind of make a joke in my mind and call them like hanging chads, like just all this paper hanging all over bicycles, wash machines, that this is really the place that we can streamline and utilize technology in a little bit more efficient manner. Going down to XV, let me skip to that here. This is, again, really the definition of where we find rental purchase property, meaning property displayed or offered primarily for rental purchase pursuant to the rental purchase agreement. Going down into the notices section, 4019-103. This cleaned up a typo.
in added language and allows notices required by the statute to be delivered by electronic means. Everybody has one of these days, and to just, have that instead of all this paper, again, is really a deregulation as far as efficiency and a cost saver with all this paper as opposed to being able to go electronically. As we move into 4019-106, again, this makes it clear that a merchant can display rental purchase property in-store, online, or third-party retailer locations. That's where those options become abundantly clear and really defined. Moving into 107A XI, Mr. Chairman, on page 5. This is where allowing alternative return options to be included in the rental agreement. If somebody wants to return the option, the merchandise, in some cases, a merchant may allow a consumer to donate an item to charity or otherwise, give alternative relief in terms of, with the rental purchase agreement spells out the options. Dropping down to line 6, XIII, is this 10-point bold type language really is almost meaningless in a digital format. So again, this is a provision that, adds again that additional consumer protection as far as, noticeable box in a type and size equal to larger than surrounding language, like, on the website, that it's very clear for the consumer that it's not buried in fine print. That's not the intention here. As we move down, and you can see, Mr. Chairman, line 17, 18, 19 gives an example of that, what that notice should look like to be modern as far as electronic disclosure, what that should look like to put the consumer on notice. Going to page 6, Mr. Chairman, then we go to 109, the changes there in A. Again, this is, related to the disclosures and the electronic nature as far as, and then also discussing default. 11 is the liability damage waiver fees, inserting an A in physical or digital format. Again, that's another evidence of the modernization language that Mr. Pickard and I have been speaking to. 113 II, again, language relating digital disclosures in a noticeable box. Again, more just talking about what this should be looking like when available online to the consumer. Dropping down to 113 advertising F. This proposed new section makes clear that the pricing disclosures do not need to be placed on each product in a partner retail store. Retail purchase transactions initiated in partner retail stores should be considered online transactions and treated as such. When the transaction may take place in the partner store, the customer is typically making an agreement with the rental purchase merchant online. Once the transaction is complete, the rental purchase merchant purchases the item from the retail partner and leases the item to the customer, which allows the customer to leave the retail partner location with the item. So this is where the transaction becomes solidified for those parties involved.
And so the retail partner at that point is paid for the item and they're kind of out of it then.
Correct.
So
That's
an
where-
advantage to them if you think about it, but please continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your interest and thoroughness of allowing such a long discussion on this. I really appreciate this.
Well, I'm only going to allow about 10 more minutes at max.
All right, we'll get motoring then.
Yeah, we got to
okay?
get the banking commissioner too.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Then we'll just try to move along. Section E, again, we have some new language about additional fees imposed on merchants working through third-party retailers. This is where we get into the $500,000, again, trying to bring some sideboards in on this online licensure and what the costs are to do that. So it's not just kind of wide open, unregulated area as far as that online aspect and the fees associated to that.
Who's the applicant? That's the consumer?
Yes, thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
So you pay 500 if it's,
Pardon me, Mr. Chairman.
that's a store, right?
Correct. It's the third-party person applying to get the permit to be
Got
able
it.
to do
Keep
this.
going. Okay.
I apologize for that confusion, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to page 10. we look at more of this language, kind of flushing out how this all interrelates about the licensure. And then this is where the physical location, and if there is no physical location, again, this is really where we talk about incorporating the digital component to the transaction and what the parameters of being able to do that. Over to page 11, the time frame is December 31st. As far as expiration as opposed to July 1st. So putting that more on a calendar year, Mr. Chairman, as opposed to the fiscal year, thought, again, had a little bit of clarity related to the applicant applying for these types of ability to do business in Wyoming, that you don't forget to do it because of fiscal versus calendar. And then that's where we get into the $500 versus the $1,000. Again, for the independent third-party retailer location, regardless of the number of independent third-party retailer locations as set by rule of the administrator. Mr. Chairman, with the administrator being the Banking Commission. Again, more direction as far as the maximum dollar amount for fines. And then, Mr. Chairman, kind of closing this out, 115 really addresses what happens in a revocation or suspension of a license. And subpart H is this paragraph is being added to allow the administrator, Mr. Chairman, who is the banking commissioner, to order a merchant to cease operations at a single location for violations that would not warrant a complete cessation of all operations in the state. Under current law, each physical location is licensed separately, so suspension of a license only causes operation to cease in that location. With the proposed statewide license, this provision would continue to allow the site-by-site operation cessation. So it just kind of, again, further defines what's happening in the event the banking examiner would need to step in, Mr. Chairman. So.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Delancey? Senator Landon.
Real quickly, so, Ms. Delancey, why the permit fees? I'm just trying to understand why the $1,000, $500. Is that specific to this act years ago that we did this? And is it because of the nature of the business? Box stores don't have to do this, right? Most of them?
Ms. Delancey, we're under a time crunch. Mr. Banking Commissioner, while she's thinking about that answer, would you come up and talk to us? Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Delancey, you answer that if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pickard's going to weigh in on the history
Mr.
of
Pickard.
where these numbers came from.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, again, this provision was a negotiation with the banking division over the last year leading up to the previous bill. And the purpose of it is that currently every location is licensed in the state of Wyoming. We are now taking that back and saying that you can be a licensed online
Blanket
third party. And that means that there's 10,000 locations in Wyoming that are potentially under this opportunity. So we negotiated the fee structure. There's a separate one in here for the online versus the current brick and mortar, and that's the purpose. And that's also the reason we changed the date from July 1 to December 31st to allow a period of time there so that the current licenses that are in effect right now will have a little bit of a period that is a cushion until this act goes into effect.
Commissioner Bishop, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeremiah Bishop, Banking Commissioner and Administrator on this act. I think I can do this in about 2 minutes.
Go right ahead.
I won't go over everything in the bill. Mostly what this changes is our application process. This changes it, like they said, from a licensing each physical location to a single statewide license. And then that's the reason for the changes in fees, so that if you have different physical locations, that's one fee for each physical location. If you're using independent third-party retailers, that's a separate fee. And then if you're online only, you only pay that one. You don't pay the first two. Currently, this is going to be in line with our current fee structure. It's a single application fee to us, and then you must renew it every year. And then that is what Section 2 is we're the one that requested the change from July 1st to December 31st. We license multiple other types of entities, and they all renew December 31st. This just allows us to have everything renewed at the same time. And so section 2, I do want to make sure that's clear, that we're not going to make people renew on July 1st of this year and then get a new license at the end of the year. If you're licensed as of July 1st, we're just going to extend that, and then we'll work with the license companies on these changes. So we'll just be changing our application forms and our fee structure. Mostly going to probably keep it so the revenue coming to us stays the same. We're not going to, it's just to cover our cost of licensing. And then also the application, they need to let us know where these independent third-party retailers are. They're not paying for everyone, but we do need to know where they're doing business, because if we ever get a complaint, that's when we go in and do an exam of them to make sure they're in compliance with this act. And for that to happen, they just need to update their list of locations every year. So with that, I'll have any questions.
That was amazing. And because of the nature of them explaining this bill first, we didn't get you up earlier, but I'm glad you're here. How do you feel about being called the administrator? Why can't we call it the banking commissioner? Why can't we give you a specific title and name?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think the initial language actually said commissioner. It's like this is how it was defined 30 years ago, so.
Is there a problem with changing it? Because when a consumer reads this, they're going, oh, the administrator, I got to find the administrator.
Yeah.
It seems like if it said the Wyoming Banking Commissioner or some kind of official title, it would be helpful. Committee questions for the banking commissioner? Any questions? Is this businesses cause you a lot of headaches? Do you get a lot of complaints?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have never had a complaint of one of these. Now, I don't know if that's just if they just don't know who to call. That's why we've never done an exam. We've never had to come in and conduct an exam because we've never had a complaint, and that's the only time we can go out. So really, it's just the administrative duties of licensing and renewals.
Thank you. All right, anybody online? Anybody in the audience? Sir, did she do okay for you? Thank you. All right, you've heard the testimony. What is your pleasure? Got a motion by Boner. Is there discussion? These are actually very important to people. If you don't have a refrigerator, it's a consumer durable. It lasts for a long time. It's not frivolous. It's either that or eat pizza, and very expensive for a long, long time. People do need these consumer durables. Things like a big screen television, you may not think they need, but that's your opinion. So this actually facilitates consumers having what they need, especially in the durable area. Are there any amendments? And honestly, I'd love if we didn't use the word administrator and we talked about the banking commissioner, but that would be all the way through. Is that a possible amendment that somebody would like to offer?
So,
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, I'm with you. I just wonder if we can do that underneath this particular, I would assume that would set up a discrepancy in the statutes if there's reference somewhere else outside of this act.
I think it's all within the same
It's only
references.
just in this act?
Yeah, I don't think, could we maybe have an amendment drafted in concept, and we can do a standing committee amendment or a committee of the whole amendment, if that's going to be an issue? All right, we'll do that. Any other amendments on the bill? Any other amendments on the bill? Call the roll, please.
That's a good idea. If we do it.
This is a roll call vote for Senate File 146, Consumer Rental Purchase Agreements Acts amendments. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Dockstader.
He left an aye.
Senator Landon.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
Aye.
Chairman Case.
Aye.
You have 5 ayes.
Looks like it passed, and thank you. And maybe you could weigh in on where we could change it, because I think it's better for our consumers and our citizens of Wyoming to not have government have this language that's like one step removed.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we'll work together to bring that to.
You guys bring it, we'll bring it as a committee of the whole. Thank you.
That's why they haven't got any complaints.
Thank you, sir. It's good to see you again.